All right, any thoughts on this one? Tough flaw question. What's tough about it?
The answer choice is almost a little bit confusing, but
Yeah, they are confusing. They're all kind of abstract, right? They're all using weird language like phenomena. They're saying causally contributes. They're talking about correlations. And then, of course, the topic is science-oriented. Plus, this question's kind of weird because it's saying to us that sleeping more is bad, and we're always being told sleeping is good, right? They're saying there's a correlation between more sleep and more illness when we expect there to be less sleep leading to more illness. So they are saying something that we don't expect them to be saying. And they're saying, as you increase sleep, you increase illness, therefore, one causes the other, simply because they are associated. Because we have them occurring at the same time, therefore, one is causing the other. So this is a classic correlation-causation argument, just one that we don't really expect to be seeing in the real world. Now, when you have a correlation-causation argument, what are some alternative possibilities or explanations? Exactly. So one of the most common explanations is a third variable that causes both of the two. What else could there be? Could be a coincidence. Exactly. Maybe it's just chance. Like over the past 500 years, we've had fewer pirates and more global warming, but pirates have nothing to do with global warming. It's just that time has gone forward, and by coincidence, those two things have both occurred. Or maybe the causality is reversed. So maybe the more you're sick, the more sick you are, the more you sleep because you're trying to recover. Or maybe as a third variable, you have a weak immune system, and the weak immune system causes you to sleep more and also causes you to get sick. I think a coincidence here is pretty unlikely because it's medical in nature, and these two things both relate to the human body, but these are things to be thinking about. I think that third variable is the most likely cause here, perhaps something like what I said about the weakened immune system. So I would scan through the choices, looking for just something pointing out a correlation-causation flaw here directly. And maybe, of course, one of these three possibilities. Do any of the choices line up with that? B? Well, B is saying, even if a given factor causally contributes, it may not be the only factor. So that would be like saying, this is a causal factor, therefore it is the only causal factor, and nothing else could have an impact.
Where it said it may not be the only factor, but couldn't that also mean that there's a third factor?
But here's the thing, is that B is accusing the argument of having failed to consider that this is not the only, that this may not be the only factor, that there could be others as well. So are they claiming that this is the exclusive cause? They'd have to be saying this is the only factor in their argument for them to have made for them to have potentially made a flaw in making that claim. Yeah, it's extreme. Yeah.
Yeah, so like additional, like an advantage to something, like advantage to getting a good grade is studying and like also getting good sleep. So if we didn't mention sleep, like at studying, that is that would feel for something else there. I don't know. Like other factors, because right now we're just thinking the causal to one affects the other.
Well, I think that B would be something like saying that studying causes good grades. Yeah, good grades. Therefore, you should focus on studying above all else and nothing else at all. But it turns out that actually studying plus sleep is really important to getting good grades. So if you said focus on studying above all else, that would be flawed because you'd be failing to consider that it's studying in conjunction with other things that may actually be more powerful than studying alone. So the exclusivity of B is what makes it wrong in this case, because the stimulus is not saying sleep is the only factor. They're just saying that sleep is a factor that is correlated, therefore it has a causal relationship. But the answer to this question is actually A, because of this third variable idea that we've been discussing. That they're failing to consider that these two things may actually be caused by a third thing. Like I said, perhaps a weakened immune system could lead to both an increase in sleep as well as someone being more sick. Yeah?
Now I'm going to give you a wild card. I picked E originally just because I didn't want to jump to the conclusion that lack of or presence of illness was the same thing as health or not unhealthy. And I was just, I guess, going off of like where the plausibility line is as opposed to what's the more important thing between like the illness thing that I'm at the beginning and then not.
So you're saying that the illness, unhealthy is kind of a disconnect in terminology. Are those things really equivalent?
Right, because like one of the things I've learned is like you don't treat the things you would intuitively think as opposites as like on the LSAT as like opposites because that's like the real world like brain talking, but like you can't do it for the LSAT. So I don't know if that was something plausible to treat as opposites.
Well, I wouldn't treat them necessarily as opposites, although they're certainly related to each other, right? Like, if you're ill, then you're not as healthy as you would otherwise be. So this is actually fairly reasonable to equate the two in some way, much more so than the previous question about yawning and tiredness. Here, that's a perfectly fine juxtaposition of two terms. I think it's fine to include them both there. But what E is actually doing is something a little bit different. It's saying that even if a specific negative consequence is not associated with something else, failing to consider that it may have other negative consequences as a result. So, like, smoking doesn't, let's say that smoking doesn't make you blind. Is smoking therefore good? Is it therefore healthy? Just because it doesn't have this particular impact doesn't automatically mean that it's good. Someone would be failing to consider that simply because it doesn't have one particular consequence, therefore it's good to have as a result. So you could fail to have one negative consequence, but possibly have many other consequences instead. The issue with E is that it would be contained in an argument where they assume that having only one particular negative consequence is all that matters, when there's a whole world of negative consequences that someone should consider.